Now, for a further look at what to expect from Pompeo's trip to Pyongyang, we have with us Dr. Jung-yeop from the Sejong Institute. Thank you for coming on the show today.
My pleasure.
So it has finally been confirmed that Pompeo will be going back to Pyongyang on Sunday. It will be just a one-day trip, but he is scheduled to meet with Kim Jong-un. What should we expect from this trip? I mean, what should our level of expectations be from this trip?
So it's just a little over a month since that U.S. government canceled his visit last August. So we have to see what has been developed during that time frame. First, we have an inter-Korean summit in early September. Then there was a UN General Assembly in which a lot of bilateral meetings took place. So I think that there has been some progress with regard to the improving the relations between the U.S. and North Korea. And I think that part of the discussion is about how to improve the negotiation between the United States and the North Korea with regard to North Korea's nuclear weapons. So I think that the first goal of the visit by Secretary Pompeo this time is to confirm the second summit between Trump and Kim Jong-un. And he also mentioned during the presser yesterday that the purpose of his visit is not only for the going forward with the summit, but also to deepen the understanding, mutual understanding for the denuclearization process. So I think that the U.S. has put the efforts to continue the negotiation with North Korea, and this visit reflects U.S. efforts for that and North Korea's willingness to be engaged in the discussion with the United States.
Do you think that we will get some sort of time, date, location about a possible Kim-Trump summit?
We don't know yet, but considering the last summit in June 12th, the date and the location was announced on May 11th, which is about a month before the summit. So many people discussed the possibility of having summit before the U.S. General election, which will take place in November 6th.
You mean the midterm elections?
Yeah, midterm elections. So now we have less than 1 month left. So for the summit to take place before the midterm elections, now we are talking about like 20 or 25 days. So unless we have a fixed date and location at this time, visit by Secretary Pompeo to North Korea, I think it's physically almost impossible to have a meeting before the midterm election in November. But nobody knows. So maybe we can have some announcement of the date and location after his trip this time.
So yes, we'll have to see on that. Another big possible outcome from this could be some sort of agreement towards a declaration to end the Korean War. I mean, it's something that North Korea has very much been pushing for. Do you think that the U.S. are ready to give any kind of concession on that part?
I think it's very unlikely that both countries have reached that kind of agreement since the cancellation of Secretary Pompeo's visit in last August. Because Secretary Pompeo publicly announced after the inter-Korean summit and before the UN General Assembly that he would meet North Korean diplomat Ri Yong-ho. And also, U.S. government publicly invite North Korea to the Wien, Austria, to have a meeting with Special Representative Steve Biegun of the U.S. government. But Steve Biegun yesterday did not mention that there was no meeting between him and the North Korean counterpart. So from that, I think that there has been no serious negotiation between U.S. government and North Korean government with regard to the nuclear program of North Korea. So I think it's very unlikely that maybe they can discuss, but it's very difficult for them to produce an outcome to finalize the deal which involves the declaration to end the war.
Biegun, as you said, is accompanying Secretary of State Pompeo to this trip to Pyongyang. Does his inclusion suggest at least that we can hope for some sort of progress on the details for denuclearization?
I think that's what U.S. government is hoping for. So in July visit by Secretary Pompeo, he was accompanied by so-called like working group within the State Department, who are composed of like Ambassador Sung Kim and two Deputy Assistant Secretary within the State Department to have a negotiation with North Korea. But North Korea did not respond to the demand by the U.S. government to have a working level negotiation for the denuclearization. So having Mr. Steve Biegun with his trip this time, U.S. government once again demanded North Korea answer in the same way that North Korea has to make designate the counterpart for the Mr. Biegun, and also North Korea has to compose the working group to negotiate with the U.S. government. So that is truly the U.S. government intention, but we have to see how North Korea is going to respond.
So there's a lot of we have to seize and a lot of hope this happens this way or that way. So let me ask again, where should we put our level of expectations? Do you think we can see some kind of big announcement to come from this trip, from Pompeo's trip to Pyongyang, or do we have to wait for that kind of big announcement for a possible summit between Trump and Kim?
I don't want to be like too pessimistic on this, but realistically, that we have to recall that like for the events involving Secretary Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang. So until August, that there was 3 visits were realized, and 1 visit was cancelled. And out of those 3 visits, Secretary Pompeo met Chairman Kim 2 times, and 2 times all before the first summit between Trump and Kim. So after Singapore, when Secretary Pompeo tried to demand a negotiation with North Korea in July, he could not meet Chairman Kim. And in August, U.S. once again tried to push the negotiation with North Korea, and the trip was even cancelled. So I think the meeting with the Chairman Kim might be the signal that this time they are not going to seriously discuss about the denuclearization process. So probably they are going to more focus on the confirmation of the second summit between Trump and Kim Jong-un. So I think that it's less likely that we are going to see the major outcomes with regard to the denuclearization process of North Korea.
Now, what's interesting in this timing as well, there's a Washington Post report which came out, with an interview with South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, and in it they talk about North Korea's denuclearization plans, but she says very strongly that perhaps a different approach is needed from the past. She cites examples from the Bush era and saying that previous kind of negotiations broke down, and that there are similar risks if Pompeo, the US, asked for a nuclear inventory, a list of nuclear weapons as such, from the North Korea at this point right now. She also called for action and corresponding measures from the US or both sides for there to be sufficient trust. Now, these statements are quite bold. Why do you think she has come out and said them now like this?
So I think that is Minister Kang's effort to make the progress between North Korea and the United States. And I think it also shows the frustration from the South Korean government, because there's a very heavy fluctuations in the relations between U.S. and North Korea, because of the denuclearization process always blocks the improving the relations between 2 countries. So I think that Minister Kang and our Minister of Foreign Affairs knows the necessity of having declaration of the list of North Korea for the ultimate denuclearization process of North Korea. But I think the reason why Minister Kang proposed the idea of holding off the demanding the list is to patch up this time for the deteriorating relations between 2 Koreas and move forward in the future, so we can have discussions on the declaration of the list of North Korea.
Now, before Pompeo goes to Pyongyang, he'll first be stopping by in Tokyo, and then after Pyongyang, he'll be coming to Seoul and then Beijing as well. Now, we've received word that the North Korean official has also gone to Beijing. The timing seems just before this Pompeo meeting as well. So where does all these countries' relationships play into this as well? What does Pompeo and the US and China and North Korea, what will they all be wanting from each other, do you think?
So whenever Secretary Pompeo paid a visit to Pyongyang, Tokyo is always the stop for his flight. So I think that the thing that outstands this time is visiting China after his visit to Pyongyang. U.S. and China has currently experiencing very heavy trade wars between two countries, and U.S. acknowledged that China's role is very important in enforcing the sanctions on North Korea. So it's very difficult for U.S. government to balance the imposing sanctions and also having trade wars with China at the same time. So as a top diplomat of the U.S. government, Secretary Pompeo tries to consult and persuade Chinese government that this is the way that both countries can improve their relations. At the same time, they can achieve the mutual goal of denuclearizing North Korea.
Now, one more piece of news that I'd like to discuss with you before we go. So, 160 South Koreans, including some government officials, are currently in North Korea, taking part in a joint anniversary event for the October 4th declaration. That was the declaration signed between Roh Moo-hyun and Kim Jong-il in 2007. So, what do you make of this event, and do you think there's anything that can come out of this event as well?
So this is more of a very symbolic event in 11 years because of the cold relations between two Koreas for the past 9 or 10 years. We couldn't have this ceremony for 11 years. So I think it's very important for two Koreas further improving the relations. And also our Minister of Unification is visiting Pyongyang. So I think his counterpart is going to welcome him and greet him and having talks. So I think both ministers with regard to the improving the inter-Korean relations can have further talks in how to implement Panmunjom and Pyongyang Declaration to improve the inter-Korean relations.
I mean, what would that look like, though? What kind of inter-Korean relations improvements can we do? What is the next step?
So I think currently, because of the sanctions imposed on North Korea, there is a limit. How further we can go with regard to the economic projects. But there are a lot of areas like family reunion, because in Pyongyang Declaration, both countries agreed to have permanent places for the family reunion. So I think that's the one area that the two ministers can agree further on the issues.
Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you for coming in today, and we look forward to your insights next week, hopefully when you can come back and tell us more about the results from the Pompeo's meeting with Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang and this meeting, this event from North Korea with the October 4th declaration event as well.
Thank you.